Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Today, we're talking about why our governments, and I'm not just talking about the government of the United States, I'm talking about worldwide, why are governments not taking climate change seriously? Why are they not meeting accords? In 2010, the world came together and they made a climate resolution, and there were 20 goals that they were going to meet. By 2024, there were none of those goals met by any country. Okay? None of those goals met by any country, despite the overwhelming evidence that human-caused climate change is happening. Now, why is this important for preppers? Preppers need to understand that the response to climate change is very, very complicated. Complicated is the best word. It's very, very complicated why nations are failing to respond to climate change. And a prepper needs to look at the things that they see and look at it from a common sense point of view and understand how the governments work and how a climate crisis may not be avoidable. Okay, so preppers need to be prepared for that. You homesteaders, you need to be prepared for that. If we get into runaway climate change, it's non-telling what's going to happen where you live. Okay, there are some things that could really happen fast, but most of the things are not going to happen in my lifetime. Okay, we have already warmed enough in my lifetime that there's about 2 weeks added and taken away from the first and last frost date. 2.5 weeks, something like that. So 15 days or so. So yeah, that's one of the things that's changed. But yeah, let's talk about why the governments aren't doing what they need to do. Now, first off, our government, this is not a political thing, okay? I don't care if you're left, right, independent, communist, socialist, I don't care what you are. It doesn't matter to me. These are just facts, and a prepper and a homesteader have to look at facts the way they really, really are. Because if you look at facts based on a political leaning or a fantasy, then you're making a mistake. So here are the reasons why government is not responding. First off, climate change is a long-term problem. Well, your average government leader is only in for 8 years, between 4 and 8 years. Okay? So our senators are elected for 6-year terms. Of course, once you get elected in the United States, it's hard to get a sitting senator unelected by a different party. It's just really hard to do that. So, just so you know that, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you're a senator in a state, it's hard for you to be displaced. There are very few short-term benefits from climate change legislation. Let me say that again. There are very few short-term benefits for climate legislation. So when we do climate change legislation, it's out there in the future. When we signed the Paris Climate Accords, which nobody was abiding by, nobody. When we signed the Paris Climate Accords under one president, and then we turned around, the next president withdrew from it. Those are short-term losses that we're not ready to deal with, apparently. Then there are a lot of costs related. It could very well change the way life is done. So our leaders delay or dilute the things that they're doing. Some leaders will put in more to solar panels and wind. while another leader might come up and go, well, we're doing that wrong. We're doing that wrong. We need to concentrate on the energy that we have, and then as that runs out, we need to put into that. Because they get pressure too from the natural gas industry and from the fossil fuel industry. Okay, they're getting pressure too. So those industries have deep pockets. So you wind up with diluted policies. Now, some economies are just based on producing oil. Dubai, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Syria. That is their number one commodity, oil. Without oil, they're broke. And because they've got so much oil, they have a lot of bucks, a lot of money to try and influence other nations to not do these things, not do the hard things. We've got plenty of oil. We'll sell you that, and don't do this hard stuff. Wait till we're about out of oil. Then we've got plenty of time. We're developing the technologies. That doesn't matter. We've got plenty of time then to convert over. You just go ahead, keep developing your technologies, and we'll keep burning fossil fuels until it's gone. And hopefully we can have some other industry or some other means of support for our country by that time. Well, big oil, big gas, big coal companies, they don't want to see us transition away. That's their bread and butter. How many coal miners will we displace? Just in America. Let's think about America. Let's say we quit doing oil and we quit doing coal and we quit doing natural gas. How many employees would lose their jobs to that? Can renewable resources find a place for those jobs? Okay? We may lose a lot of jobs already because of AI, because of robotics. Okay? We've lost lots of jobs to automation already. So when we go to the oil and gas and coal industries, we may lose a lot more. A lot. So politicians are afraid of that. And I don't blame them. Okay? But they spend so much time keeping their job, they forget to do their job. Now, what would a fast transition? Let's say we have a fast transition in a country like, I don't know, Iran. And I'm not talking about the stuff that's gone on lately. Okay? I don't know if they had nuclear weapons or not, but there are a lot of smart people in our intelligence community that can decide that, and I have to bow to their judgment. So I have no comment about what we have done in Iran. Okay, that's just, I have no comment. But let's say a country like Iran, who depends on oil, or Iraq, or Kuwait, let's say their oil economy collapsed. Everybody stopped buying oil. What would they do? If all the economics in the cities dried up? Well, when there's need and when there's want in a community like that, unrest is the next step. So leaders are afraid that converting from their sole resource away from it might cause unrest and civil unrest in their countries, and they're terrified of that. Now, climate change is a global problem, okay? In the last video, I talked about how carbon dioxide goes all over the planet. It's just not the carbon dioxide that we emit goes all over the planet. The carbon dioxide that the Soviet Union emits goes all over the planet. Europe, South Africa, everybody. It goes all over the planet. But who emitted most of that? Who emitted most of the CO2 in the world? Well, the United States did, China did, probably Europe, but Africa, South America, Australia, they didn't do that. So they go, wait a minute, this is not our responsibility. You screwed it up, you fix it. Okay, so that causes countries to rebel. Okay, and small, poor, impoverished countries go, wait a minute, we should be able to grow too, and we can't grow without fossil fuels. We just now are bringing our industries online, and we need the infrastructure to grow. We need those fossil fuels because they're cheap and fast. All right? You can't make us more impoverished. Please, stop. Yeah. Developing nations, India, South Africa, the People's Republic of the Congo, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, all these countries that are just developing economies, they need electricity. If you're going to put factories in where the labor is cheap, you've got to have the infrastructure to do that. So they need cheap electricity. Fossil fuels is cheap electricity. We need to work on development of renewable resources that can be cheap as well. Okay. The next thing is there's no accountability. When you make an agreement like the Paris Accords, all the nations together can decide, each nation can decide whether it's going to abide by them or not. And there's no police force to enforce it. Okay? When resources become scarce, that's how wars start. I would say that most of the wars that what Donald Trump calls the forever wars, which, I think we're going to be in them for a long time because I call them the gas wars. I predicted 20 years ago that we would be in something called the gas wars because we would get to a peak oil production sometime in the 20th century, toward the end of the 20th century, and then we would start to see oil production decline. And as oil production declined, because it's a limited resource, what's going to happen is that the lack of oil will create a need, and countries will fight over who gets the oil. That's the way resources are. When resources become finite and reduced, countries migrate. Okay? Countries migrate. Empires fall because of that. All right? So, now, since the Paris Accords were voluntary, nobody was following them. Almost nobody. There were a few nations that were trying to do a few things, but most of them were not following them. Like in 2010, we made the promises, and I think there were 70 or 80 member nations that signed on because real poor nations don't emit carbon dioxide much. But they signed on, and of the 20 goals listed, none of them even came close because it's a voluntary program. Voluntary. And that is a weakness. But, I don't know how you make the program not voluntary without one global economy. One global leader. Just saying. Technology is a tough thing. And there are gaps in our technology for clean energy. Solar works in the daytime. Could we do some other things like use solar to pump water up into a reservoir during the day, and at night the water would come out of that reservoir and turn a turbine and produce electricity at night? We could do stuff like that, okay? But the technology so far is behind. So we have to look at what our technology is capable of and know that it's not available everywhere. Okay? Cheap technology, it's got to become cheap enough. It's becoming cheaper every day. Okay? It's becoming cheaper every day. But until we decide that we're going to ramp up this technology and make it cheap to the world, not just to a few industrial nations, then we got a long way to go, because we are not the only consumers of energy and emitters of CO2. There will be more that come online, because entrepreneurs and businesses and corporations move to where the cost of labor is less. And where is the cost of labor less? In undeveloped countries. Well, who's going to need the infrastructure to support those industries? The undeveloped countries. So they're going to develop the cheapest energy source they can. And right now, we have a gap in the cheapness of alternative energy. Nuclear, water, okay, solar. We have a gap that we need to work on filling to bring that down to equal the cost of fossil fuels. In reality, some nations are really doing good at legislation for climate change. They still haven't met the goals that they need to, but they're doing a lot better. They're ahead. Most of the nations in Europe have climate laws and a lot of green investments and carbon pricing. Now, I don't know how much carbon credits are actually worth, because there's so much greenwashing. You know, they say for every ton of carbon we emit, our company will plant so many trees. Sounds like bullshit, okay? Or we will invest in Bolivia to save the rainforest. I don't know if they do, if they don't, or if it's just green bullshit. But they're saying it. China is probably the largest investor. China has come up with a way to develop solar panels that's cheap and efficient. So they're developing solar panels. Their electric vehicles, China has the #1 selling electric vehicles in the world. Okay, America wants to claim a lot of things, but China has the #1 electric selling vehicle in the world. Now, we have tariffs on Chinese electrical vehicles because our electric vehicles can't compete on pricing. So there's a big tariff. If you want to buy an electric vehicle from China, you have to pay like a 200% tariff. Or in other words, 3 times the price of the vehicle. If the vehicle's $14,000 or $15,000 in China, if you bought it in China, if you brought it over here, it's $45,000. Okay? So we've got those kind of tariffs on. China's heavily invested in wind energy. So, yeah, they're using solar, wind, electric vehicles, but they're still a major emitter of CO2 because they burn tons and tons and tons, millions and millions of tons of coal. The U.S., our climate action has been pretty inconsistent. In 2022, we did the Investment Act, and that put a lot of climate initiatives on, but a lot of those are being taken off. So it's just been hit or miss with the U.S. So we're not doing as much, as we're one of the major emitters, just like China. Us and China are the major emitters of CO2. Okay, so, and it's generally heavy industry and agriculture. Those are the two things that emit the most CO2, heavy industry and agriculture. So, but now, in the southern part of the globe, they're putting in more and more solar and things like that, renewable sources, so that they no longer have to import coal and oil. But they need financial help to do that. Okay? They need financial help. Now, some of the greenwashing could be going to that and allowing them to build renewable infrastructures in the southern hemisphere. You know, Africa, South America, Australia, those places where that kind of infrastructure could be really important. So we've got a long way to go and a whole lot of problems. Okay, where does that leave us? The bottom line is this. Most countries, almost all countries in the world, admit that human-caused climate change is changing our world. But almost all countries are lax about what they should do about it. They don't have a clue about what they should do about it. Or they know, but they're politically afraid. They're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid of instability. They're afraid of they're afraid of pissing off their wealthy donors. Okay? There are things that there's a game being played up here that some of us can't see. Alright? And I don't know what the game is. I'm not up here. Alright? There's a game being played up there. And the people who are going to pay the price are the lowliest, the most vulnerable. The people who are going to pay the biggest price for climate change are the people in third world countries, unless they can adapt to some means of producing food. Climate change will cause all kinds of problems, especially in Latin America and places along the equator. Maybe even if you look, our deep south here in the United States is on the same parallel line as the Sahara Desert. So if climate change warms enough, we're going to see the desertification of the southern U.S. That could be a big deal. Okay? A big deal. Imagine if Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, all become Arkansas, Missouri. Imagine all of them becoming desertified. That could be a big deal. Is it going to happen in my lifetime? Probably not. But maybe in my grandkids' lifetime. So that might be something. But the tragedy is going to be for the meekest people on earth. The folks in South Africa, the folks in the Congo, the folks in Central America. Okay? The folks where sea level rise is going to displace them. Alright? And they'll have to migrate. Okay? That happens. Migrations, mass migrations occur. Some of the problem we see coming from Venezuela and from Mexico and from, those are climate migrants. They're not all, okay? I'm not saying that they're all. But part of them, the farm that they used to grow food on is too dry to grow food. The monsoons aren't coming anymore. Climate change can change the monsoon patterns, and the monsoons won't come anymore. Imagine 1.4 billion people in India. Imagine what happens if the monsoons don't come to India anymore. Okay, the monsoons bring the rain they need to grow food. What happens if it don't come there anymore? So there's a lot of worry about what's going to go on. So as a prepper and as a homesteader, you need to have your eyes wide open and understand, you have to understand that every country admits that humans are causing climate change. But they can't do anything about it because it would cripple their economies. Or they won't do anything about it because it could cripple their economies. So it's a two-edged sword, and homesteaders and preppers need to be alive, awake, listening, paying attention. Okay, it's going to be an imminent threat. Maybe in my lifetime, if we get runaway climate change, like we start letting too much methane comes out of the permafrost, or too much methane if the ocean's warm too much and the methane bubbles up out of the ocean, from the ocean floor, the methyl hydrates. So there could be a lot of things that could happen that really impact us, even in my 10 years to go. You know, my dad died at 67. I'm 62. If I make it to 72, I'll have outlived him by 5 years. Okay? So, yeah, I would like to go on into my 70s and live to that 78-year-old lifespan that they say, but I don't want to do it if I'm all broke up and can't do nothing and sitting in a nursing home with my tongue lolled out. I don't want to be that way. But, yeah, you got to be ready as a prepper and as a homesteader to evaluate things the way they really are. Now, if you like this stuff, this homesteading, prepping, do-it-yourself kind of thing, be certain to come on out to the channel and subscribe. We do this homesteading stuff every week, sometimes once, sometimes 5 videos. Just depends on what's going on in the homestead that week. Now, if you hit the little bell when you come to the channel, it'll notify you when we upload a video. We upload on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, with the occasional short on Friday, Saturday, and through the week. Now, it's time for me to get on to the next thing. I love you all.